A wonderful afternoon to those of you who are here in Germany, like me, and a very good early morning to those of you who contribute from the United States. And right now, I think it's very early for you. So thanks very much for attending. I'm very delighted to welcome you to today's policy talk, Innovation Ecosystems Insights from California's Bay Area for German Universities, which is, as I think, a very timely topic, given that innovation has played an increasingly important role in the research policy debates in Germany over the past 1 or 2 years. And in this debate, I think it's quite clear, and there are not so many who would deny that Germany can build on a variety of strong innovation indicators, such as a strong basic research, exports, the production of technology goods, also investment in research and development is quite high. And there are also 7 of the world's top 100 most innovative regions located in Germany, which makes Germany number 3 worldwide after China and the United States when it comes to the so-called innovation clusters. So, but at the same time, and this is also a reason why we have this talk here today, it has also become increasingly clear that Germany is facing some considerable challenges in the field of innovation. Just a week ago, some of you may have read that, the United Nations the United Nations Organization for Intellectual Property Rights has published a Global Innovation Index 2025, in which it attested Germany quite a few structural challenges when it comes to innovation and technology transfer, in particular in the areas of digitization and bureaucracy. I think no surprise for the Germans here, probably also not for the Americans, knowing Germany a little bit. But at the same time, experts also determine a lacking comprehensive understanding, or as they also put it, a holistic approach towards innovation in Germany, an approach that would consider the interconnectedness of technology and also research and development and social components of innovation. And through this interconnectedness would boost the development of promising business and new companies in Germany. So as a result, and that's the bottom line of the study, Germany lost its spot in the top 10 of the global innovative ranking and drops from position 9 to position 11. In recent months, we've seen that these structural challenges have come into the center of political attention in Germany. A first indicator for this was that right after taking office in May, the new German government rebranded its Ministry for Education and Research, as it was called before, into a Ministry of Research, Technology and Space. And only 2 months later, the now responsible Federal Minister Dorothee Bär launched a so-called high-tech agenda for Germany, which aims at improving the transfer of research outcome to industry with a focus on 6 particular fields, among them AI, quantum, and climate neutral mobility. I think the research sector in Germany has widely welcomed this initiative, also because it aims at taking the whole process into view, which, as I said before, is considered as a weakness by the UN report. So the whole process, from nurturing creative and curious minds to high-class research, from discovering ways to innovate to fostering entrepreneurial spirit. At the same time, many in our sector still see room for improvement in what we try to achieve today, namely to take advantage for international networks and learn from other innovation ecosystems worldwide. Because even though we all know that the framework conditions of these ecosystems vary, of course, there is different regulatory standards, there's different cultural mindsets. I'm quite sure we will hear about this also later. But I think we will also profit from an intensified international dialogue on the success factors for innovation and tech transfer. So here we are trying to foster such a dialogue, and our 6 German centers for research and innovation, short and in German DBIH, the WIH, I think form a perfect platform to organize such an international exchange. Together with our partners in the German Alliance of Research Organizations, the DAAD is operating these centers that connect the German research landscape to global hotspots of research-based innovation and lively startup scenes, for example, in Tokyo, Delhi, and Sao Paulo. And of course, it's no coincidence that San Francisco was selected as location for the latest addition to the Centers Network in 2022, so only 3 years ago. And we already had such a DBIH in New York back at this time. Very successful center, but still the consortium opted for a second US base in California, in a region that you can all imagine ranks among the top 3 in the ranking that I mentioned earlier in the Global Innovation Index. Today, and only 3 years later, the DBIH in San Francisco already counts 15 main supporters, which are German organizations which have an office in the United States, or particularly in the Bay Area. Among them, the German Embassy in Washington, D.C., but also the German-American Chambers of Commerce, and quite a few German universities like Heidelberg Technical University of Munich or University of Cologne. And in addition, we also have already 12 associate supporters which are based in Germany. And I would like to encourage all of you who are here today from German universities or other research organizations who are still no supporters of the DBIH San Francisco to get in touch and to explore the options that you have by becoming a supporter, be it a main supporter in the Bay Area or associate in Germany. For me personally, it was great to have had the opportunity to join one of DBIH San Francisco's programs and spend 1 week in the Bay Area a year ago, approximately. I was there together with a delegation of 21 university leaders from Germany, and had a brilliant time visiting various of your great universities, and also spots where we could see how innovation comes into practice. And I have very vivid memories of our visit to beautiful UC Berkeley, seeing Darren's background here on the screen, where we were shown how university-based incubators in the life sciences work, and also how Berkeley runs industry-university collaborations. So very delighted that with Darren Cook here and also with Olaf Groth, we have 2 speakers from UC Berkeley joining us today, and will be able to elaborate more deeply on the university's approach and strategies. So great to see you. Good to see you again. And I'm now very much looking forward to the following panel discussion. I'd like to express my thanks to all of our panelists who will be introduced more in depth in short. Panelists from the United States, but also from Germany. And also a big thank you to the organizing team of the KIWI and DAAD and of the DBIH San Francisco. I hope that by the end of today, in 1.5 hours approximately, we will have gained some inspiration as to which innovation pathways we could potentially transfer from the Bay Area to Germany, if there are any. And I now hand over to Zahar Bart-Manzouri, director of our center in San Francisco, who will lead us through the following discussions. Thank you very much, Zahar, and I wish all of you an inspiring exchange. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kai Six, and good morning from San Francisco, and good morning to Germany. Welcome to this KIWI Policy Talk. Our theme today is universities' role as innovation engines. Innovation is not only an academic concern, it drives economic development, prosperity, and solutions to global challenges. the United States, and especially the Bay Area, has become a global symbol of entrepreneurial universities and disruptive innovation. Germany, by contrast, is renowned for incremental, risk-averse innovation, but is seeking ways to accelerate knowledge transfer into startups and broader societal impact. Let me start with a very short introduction to the topic before we dive deeper into the conversation with my wonderful panelists. So if I can see the presentation now, great. Yeah, so thank you very much. Let me see if I can pull this up now. Great. So my name is Sarbat Mansouri. I'm the director of the German Center for Research and Innovation based here in San Francisco. And I'm very happy that Kai already made this pitch, what DWIH is. But on the next slide, we have an overview about the DWIH. So as we already heard, there are 6 innovation forums at 6 prominent locations around the world. This is a joint initiative led by politics, economics, and science, and brings together innovators from various locations in the world with the German innovation ecosystem. We have around 100 supporters, mainly German universities and research centers, and we are always open to new members to this innovation family. The management and general responsibility is held by the DAAD in Bonn. So let's come to the next slide and ask the question, why is innovation in higher education so important? First of all, it's a driver of economic growth. Universities are not just knowledge producers. They generate intellectual property, startups, and spin-offs that feed directly into new industries. Also, public universities should serve society and find solutions for pressing problems and challenges. So we want to ensure that economic and academic discoveries do not remain on the shelf, but are applied in ways that benefit communities. Global competitiveness. Countries compete on innovation capacity, not just traditional industries. Without strong universities, innovation ecosystems, and nations risk falling behind in talent, technology, and investment. And it's about talent development. So we all know that exposure to interdisciplinary and entrepreneurial learning fosters resilience, risk tolerance, and problem solving. And we also need to bridge public, private, and academic sectors because innovation in higher education fosters collaboration between these different leaders in society. This is very important. And now we ask the question, so what is so special about the Bay Area? And I think this, to find out what the secret sauce is part of our panel discussion we will dive into a little bit later. So on the next graphic, we'll see the so-called spaghetti graphic, and Olaf will tell us later a little bit more about it because he's the co-author of a report that was conducted by the Bay Area Council of Economics in 2018, I believe. So what you can see here shows the collaborative patterns in the Bay Area from different institutions. So in the center, you see the universities, you have corporates, you have governmental bodies, you have incubators and accelerators. And what is so special about this model is the level of interaction and how they accelerate each other. We come to that in a bit, but just keep in mind this very confusing graphic that I just showed you. So what does a DWIH do? We also compare what is the status quo in Germany and what is the status quo in the Bay Area. So on the next slide, you'll see also a QR code to a report that Cambrian Futures conducted for us that asks the question, how can we foster innovation in higher education? And this report shows a very comprehensive overview on what is the status quo in Germany and the Bay Area, and what could be our model to innovate. And just to show you a very few numbers, 16% of GDP value of startups in 2022 is the number from the US compared to 4.7% of GDP value of startups in Germany. On the other side, we had in 2022 almost 17,000 new patent applications by TTOs, technology transfer offices at universities in the US, compared to around 500 in Germany. The goal of the study was to identify adaptable recommendations. We know that it's tough to compare a region with a country with very dynamic and different circumstances. But that doesn't mean that there is nothing to do. I think this report definitely gives some very valuable recommendations that we will also dive deeper into in a bit. And on my next slide, you can see an overview of different characteristics that lead to innovation. We have the IP and legal framework, organizational capacities, talent and migration, mindset and culture, and funding landscape. And as you can see, the blue line is Germany and the yellow is the US. And not only talking about the numbers, what's here very interesting is that we see the largest shift in mindset and culture and the funding landscape. Also a little bit in the IP framework, showing us that, okay, there is a difference, but specifically in these areas, there is still a lot to do. So this is why I just wanted to start with this little overview on what actually can give us a first idea on what to do. And now I would like to start with my wonderful panel. So first of all, I would like to introduce to you Darren Cook. Darren is the Interim Chief of Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer at UC Berkeley, as we can see in his background. Darren leads innovation and entrepreneurship strategy at UC Berkeley and is the executive director of the Life Science Entrepreneurship Center at UC Berkeley. Darren focuses on building bridges between research, startups, and industry at one of the world's top public universities. So despite being a publicly funded institution, Berkeley is one of the most entrepreneurial public universities worldwide. How did Berkeley create the structures and also the mindset that encourage professors and students to become entrepreneurs? What concrete steps supported this cultural shift? And how does the entire university, not just the startup, at the end of the day, benefit from these entrepreneurial activities?
Wait, did you want me to?
Yes, please, Darren.
I thought we were doing all the intros first.
Sorry, Darren. No, I wanted to start with you.
That's what led to the long pause. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. So, as mentioned, I'm Darren Cook, Interim Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer at UC Berkeley. In that role, I think it's important to understand what that position is and how it came about. So, this role was started in 2019 at the behest of the then Vice Chancellor for Research, Paul Alivisatos, who commissioned a report saying, hey, we have a lot of resources on the UC Berkeley campus, but there are dozens of them. Do they work together? It's confusing. How do you navigate it? What should we do to help make sense of this? And what we did in 2019 is we hired the former dean of the Haas School of Business, Rich Lyons, to be our first Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer. And he set up mechanisms to basically tame the system. Most of it, and I'm happy to talk about this more, the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Council, which pulls together resources across the campus. I've continued to work on ways of pulling together resources on campus. But I think it's important to note that last year, Rich Lyons, our first Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer, became the president of UC Berkeley. So just pointing out that there is, from the top, now we basically have the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Chancellor, the president and chancellor. We call it chancellor here. But that's who we picked to lead the institution. So as Zahar mentioned, Berkeley has been identified as #1 in the world for producing venture-backed startups by PitchBook. That ranking came out just a couple weeks ago for the 3rd year in a row, and we're happy about that. Because we've gotten so many questions about, as you've mentioned, a public university, which seems like would have a different mission, how did it become suddenly the #1 producer of venture-backed startups in the world? We actually wrote a book. I've got the book right here. And is it showing up? It is. Startup Campus. If you Google it, Startup Campus Berkeley, it's going to pop up on Amazon or UC Press. It's published by UC Press. And for anyone interested in doing a deeper dive, and this is basically a 40-year history of how we started as a little bit skeptical about innovation and entrepreneurship to being a sort of what we say here, the unexpected leader. So I could go on and on almost indefinitely, but I don't want to hog the Zoom stage. So happy to answer any questions, or if there's something else that you'd like me to touch on. Actually, it may be relevant to know that within my role, it's unusual in that I run the I&E Council, which has 65 members on it, but only 2 of those members report into my office. So what's unusual about this position is that it's really just leading by influence, because only the Tech Transfer Office and Berkeley Skydeck, our startup accelerator, technically reports into my office. Everything else across campus, the other 63 orgs, operate independently, and it's our challenge to figure out how to make them want to work together.
Interesting. Yeah, Darren, maybe only one point I would like to touch here on now. As we all know, some departments are more likely to found startups if we talk about the life science incubator or engineering. But UC Berkeley has basically all departments and fields of research. So how do they feel about that? Are they as proud as you if they look at the statistics and see, yes, UC Berkeley is #1 in terms of being an entrepreneurial university? And how can you bring folks together at UC Berkeley on this topic?
Yeah. So we have a couple programs that may not be exactly entrepreneurship, but it comes really close. #1, the Berkeley Changemaker program, trademarked. We have 40 undergraduate classes in the Berkeley Changemaker framework that share a common theme: critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, which really is what employers are looking for. But in these classes, they're not entrepreneurship classes, because it's sort of answering the question, what percentage of undergraduates at a major university do you think should be a startup founder? What percentage? Not many, right? It's kind of a unique DNA to want to go off on your own and start your company and lead it. But how many undergraduates at a major university would benefit from thinking like an entrepreneur? They all would, right? And so that's, with these 40 classes, we've had some, I think, 10,000 students go through the Berkeley Changemaker program. And so, and this just started in 2020, by the way. This is not an old program. It's really infusing an entrepreneurship mindset in the student body early on. And so that's, by the way, so this is getting to the point of, this is not just engineering and life sciences. It goes across the board. I just helped launch a Berkeley Changemaker course in journalism.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Darren. Speaking of entrepreneurial mindset, I would like to include now Dietmar to this conversation. Dietmar Haarhoff is the director of the Max Planck Institute of Innovation and Competition. He's a leading scholar on innovation, intellectual property, and entrepreneurship. He's also the former chair of the Commission of Experts for Research and Innovation, EFI, advising the German government. Dietmar, you have been instrumental in shaping the German innovation policy. How should, and you know this is always my favorite question, how should excellence and innovation be combined in higher education strategy? And what lessons can Germany learn from the Bay Area? And let's take Berkeley as an example.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for having me and for the questions, Zaha. I have to admit that I'm a little bit biased because it might be that an even stronger qualification to be here in this panel is I'm a co-founder of startups. I founded startup centers. I co-founded an organization, German Accelerator, in Silicon Valley during a year as a visiting professor in Stanford. So I'm trying to put my money where my mouth is when I'm talking now. So indeed, this is one of the challenges in Germany. Why is it a challenge? Because we have this notion that Humboldt once established the Humboldtian University that does not engage in application. It does foundational research. I'm exaggerating this. I'm sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings, but I just want to make clear that culturally, some German universities are still in the Humboldtian age and frown at the notion that you could go into commercialization, or at least for your students, for your researchers, facilitate the path towards commercialization. And I think the first step is not framing that in your strategy. The first step might be to work at the culture and to show that that is possible. And of course, we have wonderful examples. Berkeley is one, Stanford is another one in the Bay Area, but we also have wonderful examples of that in Germany, where other countries like the Nordic countries or the Netherlands, the Baltic countries are very good at this and sort of show us the way how this can be done. So putting it into strategy is nonetheless important because let me sort of borrow a term from Darren. The voice from the top is absolutely important. And if the voice from the top says the last 200 years we were not in need of entrepreneurship at the university, we will never be in need of the entrepreneurship topic or dealing with it, then even as a professor who wants to do something for your students, you have a hard time. But it's still possible. So Darren, you pointed to a wonderful framework. At Ludwig Maximilians University, we introduced some 15 years ago a course which was called Key Qualifications. So again, it doesn't talk about entrepreneurship. But what the course involved was to have 50 projects staffed with 2 teams each of 5 people, so 500 students in their second term in business administration, and then engaging with these companies to do something for them. So this does not necessarily train entrepreneurship. It trains a broad set of skills, as you had pointed out, but yet it is very helpful to change culture, to bring people to application, and to also show them that scientific results, theoretical results, can be applied to real-world problems very fruitfully. So sorry for the lengthy answer, but I was just taken away by the things that you had mentioned, Darren. And I think we're from the starting point, we're in a similar position. Yet we often at German University have to find this voice from the top. We need the leadership that guides us into the direction. I'm very optimistic that we will get that very more often now. I can report on the university that I mentioned that they now have a vice president for entrepreneurship, which is a complete novelty. And I'm sure he's a former founder of that university or coming from that university. I'm sure things will change. I'm sure that we can learn from Berkeley and from other examples and implement some stuff that helps us along.
Thank you very much, Dietmar. And what I really like is that your optimism is still there. And after years of being really an advocate for entrepreneurship, you see these challenges and this shift in German universities. And I think, speaking of strategy, it's also putting entrepreneurial activities and innovation to a core mission of universities. I think this is also something that you always emphasize on. It doesn't help just to have somewhere on campus a TTO office that deals with patenting. It really has to be part of a leadership decision. And speaking now of global strategy and innovation, I would like to include Olaf to this conversation, also a good friend of yours from the German accelerator times and in the Bay Area. Olaf, you are a global strategy and innovation expert. You're the founder of Cambrian Futures and Cambrian Labs, and you advise companies and governments. You're also a professional faculty member at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business and the co-author of various studies, also the one that you conducted for us. Olaf, let's come back to some graphics that we were talking about earlier. So you described the Bay Area's ecosystem as a spaghetti model of dense, overlapping collaboration. Can you explain what this model means in practice? To come a little bit more to the strategic side of setting up innovation ecosystem, and why is it so effective in the Bay Area? Because we all know many regions of the world try to copy that model and we're not as successful as the Bay Area. So can you bring some light into our confusion? And may I ask for the spaghetti graph again while you're talking?
All right. Thank you so much, Zahar. First of all, it's a real privilege to be with you and, of course, this esteemed panel. I know all of you personally, and it's always a pleasure to talk about these things. Look, as a global strategist, I advise a lot on internationally connected ecosystems for innovation. And the chief mistake that we make is that we take a look at the hard facts, as we say, and we discount the soft factors. That is understandable because the hard things are a bit easier to measure. But it really sidesteps what is at the core of a success recipe in an innovation ecosystem. And you see that instantiated here in this graphic, right? Really, this graphic is less about the boxes as it is about the flows between the boxes. And to bring it down to the so what here for Germany versus the United States, or especially the Bay Area, Germany and many countries around the world do not just fail to replicate the effects of a Silicon Valley because of inherent cultural differences, or at least not the right cultural differences. The real cultural differences to take a look at are those that inhibit the flows. Ecosystems are all about flows. If you're looking at world-class universities, we can still say Germany has some world-class universities. Yes, it has been lagging in the rankings. The Chinese have been ascending. There are too few German universities in global rankings, but we also know the flaws around global rankings. It's not so much how blue chip a university is, and I say this, of course, with a fair amount of pride about my own home institution, UC Berkeley, which is #1 these days. It's also the case that institutions that are in the ecosystem that are less well known, such as Cal State universities or San Jose State University, for instance, very important universities in furnishing talent that is maybe not Nobel Prize winning, but essential for international venturing here from within the Bay Area. So this talent, whether it's from Berkeley or from San Jose State, needs to travel. It needs to transition. It needs to flow. And it can, and this ecosystem will allow that, whereas in many cultures, including Germany, flows are too often restricted and inhibited and blocked. And blockage means that we cannot transfer talent, and with it, of course, necessary training on new skills, new knowledge, but also interpersonal trust. And that's really key in the Bay Area. There are informal trust creation mechanisms, as well as formal ones, of course, but the formal ones are easier to study. So as we block talent or enable talent to travel, we're actually facilitating this flow of knowledge, of skills, of intellectual property, and of funding, of course. UC Berkeley is a great example. We have many founders amongst our alumni, and they're all too happy to give back to the university to help either with cash or with corporate relationships that will, of course, at some point also bring cash to research. Which gets me to the second topic, which is, the first topic was the permeability of flows. The second one is people. And here we have to really emphasize that people are motivated to learn new things, to stimulate themselves, but also reap the rewards. And I think we have to be honest about that, much more honest in Germany and other countries, that it's okay if you create a ostensibly world-changing venture, it's also okay for you to reap outsized rewards. And that's oftentimes, especially in Europe and especially in Germany, a dirty concept, right? Talking about becoming a multimillionaire or a billionaire. But it's absolutely justified when the entrepreneur actually renews the country, helps the country grow, helps society become richer. Why then ostracize that kind of individual? So, which gets me to the second point, which is culturally speaking, the word entrepreneur is a very positive one here in the United States and especially in the Bay Area. In fact, I will say the culture, the ethos that people like Darren here are promulgating at our university and in the region is so strong that you almost feel bad if you don't launch a startup like Dietmar has, right? And I've been part of startups. I run my own business, quite aside from being a professor, and the ecosystem not only allows that, it desires it, it wants it, and it almost makes you feel bad as though you don't belong if you don't do it. And so this culture of entrepreneurship, but also of personal transformation is very strong. You cannot engage in a venture that is supposed to transform a space, an industry, an economy, a society without changing yourself. And I think that's another thing that Germany needs to embrace much more. It is okay to change your career track and to have it zigzag so as to transfer your own skills and knowledge into a new field. In fact, the Bay Area is phenomenal at this. I used to start my career in telecom, and then I went into renewable energy. And from there, I transferred my skills to aerospace. And now I do a lot of work in artificial intelligence. As people do that, it is not so much about quickly and hastily jumping from one to the other as it is leveraging who you were in the last job or function into a new area that then generates value in that new domain. And that is an important cross-fertilization that we need to welcome around the globe and especially in Germany. With that comes and this is the third thing under people, comes a mindset not just of entrepreneurship, but idealism. And I think Darren pointed out, right, this ethos at Berkeley that we have of change maker, right? Change maker doesn't just mean I launch a product and I'm successful and I become a billionaire. Change maker literally means I am revolutionizing something. It could be a small space, it could be an industry, it could be societal overhaul. And I think Berkeley is particularly strong in that, whereas other universities are maybe more focused on commercial change making. But that idealism is necessary. And I still remember Helmut Schmidt saying, right, those of us who have visions ought to go see a doctor, right? So Germans need to embrace grand visions and think about how to get grand visions instantiated. And so normalizing all of that is really important. Last point, and then I'll hand over the mic. We need to make sure that both in the United States and in Germany, we see immigrants who are qualified, and we need smart immigration strategies as a strategic asset for our innovation ecosystems. The United States and Germany actually have about 25% of entrepreneur populations that are foreign born. I think Germany is a little behind, but not by much. And so we need to make sure that we welcome them as true value generators in our economies and decisively train them on entrepreneurship. In fact, I just spoke with a business owner yesterday over dinner in Germany who said, look, the foreign-born young people are even more appreciative of the entrepreneurship education they're getting in Germany because they see this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, whereas maybe domestically born talent doesn't quite see that same privilege. But these foreigners are even more important because they not just bring talent and knowledge, but they also open up foreign markets for us, whereas we might not be able to do that if we were born locally. They create diaspora relationships back to their home countries, and therefore open a world of markets and potential for us. So they pay us back in spades. Yeah. And with that, I hand it back over. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Olaf, especially to the last point that you mentioned. Another number is that around 40% of startup founders are immigrants in the Bay Area. So we see that the effect of immigration and internationalization is always a booster for innovation. And this is one of the key aspects of innovation. As we all see, these are different pieces of a puzzle that need to be put together with hard and soft facts, as you say, in order to be successful. And speaking of these soft factors, and I would like to quote Anne here, failing forward, I would like to come a little bit to this educational part of entrepreneurship, because as we all know, we are all more or less involved in university activities, and universities have three missions. The first mission is to teach, the second is to do research, and university's third mission is how to make it accessible, how to put ideas into practice, and for the benefit of society and also for the benefit of the economic growth of a country. So let me come to Anne, who is also a serial entrepreneur. And she has been a really good friend and very helpful in setting up programs for women in entrepreneurship, and is the founder of the Guild. It's an innovation platform. Again, it's about the connections and not only about the hard facts. So Anne has extensive experience in startup acceleration, mentoring, and building entrepreneurial communities. And you founded the Guild Academy to support women entrepreneurs, and you know firsthand what it takes to build successful startups. From your perspective, how should entrepreneurship be taught at universities? And what should startup centers at universities consider when they create effective programs? And what do you see as the key success factors for university-based entrepreneurship?
Okay, so how much time do we have? Hi, everybody. Well, I want to show you this little collage. And if you read in the middle, it says fail forward. And it is right in the middle of Stanford in the D School that we visited with 10 incredible female entrepreneurs from Germany, thanks to the DAAD Guild Academy program we just ran. And they came and visited us 3 weeks ago. And so let me put some of the puzzle pieces that we heard about together in the sense, like, how do they fit together? And how do we invite more immigrants? How do we make these great learnings from Silicon Valley and beyond, perhaps a reality in the cultural context of Germany and the universities there? So the first step, and I'm probably going to touch on 5 steps, but the first step is really about the experiential experience versus the theoretical experience. And when we think about academic education, still, even in the United States, we think of the professor standing in front of the class in a huge auditorium and people listening. And for entrepreneurship, you couldn't do anything that is more counter to achieving the success you'd like to achieve. So instead of making entrepreneurship a lecture hall exercise, we really have to move them to launch pads. And so what does a launch pad look like? Now, we can look at the launch pads in the United States, but we can also look at the universities in Germany that are doing that relatively well and borrow from that concept. So launch pads are places where we can practice. So the entrepreneurs in my programs, they cannot join to just listen. They have to work on a project. Everyone, even if they just have an idea, have to commit to that idea and go a step forward. When I teach at UC Berkeley in the entrepreneurship product management class I'm teaching at SCET, I send my entrepreneurs with donuts for 60 minutes on the campus and say, sell as many as you can. And the one that gets the most money gets everybody's profits. Yeah, so we're creating these experiences, these sprints, these hackathons, and these workshops that really teach you how to do it, and they put you into the position of you becoming an entrepreneur and you accepting that role as an entrepreneur. You're not just sitting there and somebody's talking at you. And I think that's a big shift also for the United States to move towards a pedagogy that really entails all that. Yeah, Ken Singer, the head of the SCET program here at UC Berkeley, is doing a fantastic job at that. He's doing a European Global Innovation Academy in Porto. We were this year. He's, for the very first week, we're just inviting entrepreneurs to students to come and to do city quests. That's it. Yeah. They even put students into a room and nobody shows up. And they're waiting for 60 minutes to see what the students are going to do. Have you ever seen that in a German university? I bet you know, right? And it's being brave and courageous as educators as well to try new concepts and to design experiments, especially in a world of ChatGPT where all the answers are already, the theoretical answers are available at your fingertips, to design this experience for people to really practice entrepreneurship, to know what it feels like to take a big leap to try to sell these donuts, but there's still the risk you're going to lose it all. Yeah. And so I think pedagogy, workshops, sprints, hackathons, all these things are really important to make lecture halls into launch pads. I also think the physical proximity, obviously, to corporates, to alumni, they can make those introductions, like you mentioned, Olaf, right? The physical proximity to a center where I can go now beyond that first step in entrepreneurship is really key, and that requires much more than just a university center. Yeah, and then we talked about the spaghetti graph, and maybe a university can't fix it all. We have to come together as a country to fix this, right? We have to decide on what might be tax incentives to invest more into startups, which is not a university policy at all. But if that all comes together, perhaps we can, in fact, unlock some of that incredible wealth that is available in the family offices of Germany to take that step into investing in those startups. Because Germany is doing a great job of pushing money to the first ideas. So I have a lot of founders through the Start 2 programs I mentor that come and say, look, we have funding for the first year. It's no problem. It's as much as I would be making in a real job. It creates a cushy environment for those entrepreneurs, and they don't even have to push really hard because the pressure isn't there. Now, I don't know how we create more pressure from a university perspective, but I think these are all elements to think about, and also for the politicians to think about what does that mean for maternity leave, what does that mean for family leave, and for social security as a whole. And I'm not saying I have the answer here, but I think these are all elements that play into why entrepreneurs are pushing so hard, why are they so courageous here in Silicon Valley, and why they have the big vision. And Magdalena, who just came into our program, who is at TUM, but also now Harvard, and she's starting a company there, she has the real near peer experience for these entrepreneurs, right? She is living that transition right now, and she's saying in Munich everybody talks about 2 to 3 years. Here we're talking in decades, if not a century, right? So it's that big vision thinking. So how can you create X prizes, for instance, or those types of competitions in Germany that make you think really long term, right? Like that, those are the questions I would have for anybody who is in a university sitting thinking about startup competitions, or what type of innovation do we want to push forward. And you're talking about soft skills, and I'm not sure if I agree with the word soft skill here, but I feel like mentorship is such an important part of the puzzle. And I created a mentoring group called Crest Collective of startup advisors that come together to support entrepreneurs right at that critical moment when they go from seed funding to Series A funding, where they need the experts, and sometimes I say the adults in the room, but they don't have the money to hire them yet. And so the question here is, how can we in Germany build mentoring pools that are effective? Can we pay mentors? I've had incredible mentors from the Guild Academy from last year that actually stepped into mentoring roles this year for the entrepreneurs, and they had so much to pass on. Mentoring isn't that you have to have white hair and be retired, right? It is being in the ecosystem, being a near peer, having just gone through the last round of funding, and then giving back. But what are the systems we can create to make that happen from a mentoring and mentorship perspective? And ultimately, really, I mean, these ecosystems have to be nodes, not outposts. I hear that many times. The IP office is somewhere in the outskirts of wherever, we don't even know where it is and we can't find it, right? Like, how can we centralize that? And I think we can learn a lot from Apple, who created campuses where people have to cross paths all the way, right? To also think about the place for an innovation and what does that physically look like. And of course, these are long-term decisions, but sometimes just moving a few people around and making it so that the social science entrepreneurs cross paths with the engineering entrepreneurs, or having programs like the one I'm teaching where we have designers, architects, coders, business people, and they all form interdisciplinary startup teams. Those would be all ideas to think about and to define what may that look like for our university, and then how can we collaborate with other universities to be really ecosystems and nodes and not compete with each other on top of the innovation we're driving within our institutions.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for emphasizing how important this mentoring and also feeling of not being alone is for an entrepreneur. It really also refers to what Darren said with the Changemaker program: be part of a change, and a sense of belonging to a group can really have the power to shift things. But for those of you who don't know, Germany launched startup factories to turn research and ideas into scalable businesses, strengthen global competitiveness, and drive innovation-driven growth across the country. These are regional innovation clusters, and to guide us through this landscape, we have Stefanie Molthagen-Schnöring here as a panelist whose expertise in communications, academia, and innovation ecosystem offers invaluable perspective on how these factories are shaping Germany's entrepreneurial future. So Stefanie is the vice president of the HTW Berlin, one of Germany's largest universities of applied science. She's a science innovation officer at UNITE, University Alliance for Innovation, Transfer, and Entrepreneurship. And she is also a strong advocate for startup support structures and new initiatives like the Startup Factory here. Stefanie, you are closely involved in Germany's Startup Factories initiative, which aims to scale entrepreneurial support structures. what new opportunities do you see emerging with this funding? And probably you can refer to many points that we have mentioned previously about being close to industry, bringing it physically closer to the student, and not having isolated projects, and generate systemic impact for the higher education sector. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Thanks a lot, Zaha. Let me put one thought first, because you said that there are three pillars, teaching, research, and transfer. And in my point of view, we have transfer integrated in the first two ones. So we have teaching and research, and transfer is for me like more an integrated level. So that really helps for this systemic change we spoke about a lot today. So concerning the startup factories, as you already mentioned, it's a competition which was launched by the German government this year. And what is special for this startup factory model is that's a private-public partnership model. So we raised 10 million euros in private funds and received 10 million euros from the federal government in return to establish the Sustainable Innovation Center within the next 5 years. And at the moment, we have around 25 partners from research institutions and universities and 15 companies and foundations, and we grow every week. So there is a very strong demand. And we really believe that we have to create a one-stop shop for innovation activity in Berlin and Brandenburg, and that we do not need this silo mentality anymore, so that we have this strong network, which was just mentioned, with partners from science, from industry, and from society for, like Anne said, mentoring, but also for the expertise all these different partners bring to our startup factory. What is also crucial for the startup factory approach is the entrepreneurial spirit from the beginning on, not only concerning teaching and talents, but also the unity, the entity which was built. It's not a university, but it's an entity which is made up from universities and the partners, so that we also have a team of managers who have worked, for example, in venture capital or in industry before. I'm the only person from science in this in our management team, so that we have all these different skills and capabilities. We would like to define standard processes. So we have just talked about IP, for example. It might be a problem in Germany for founders from academia, and they often say that's very intransparent and it's not very quick. So we would like to define these processes and make them much quicker. We would like to share infrastructure. So like I said before, we are 25 different institutions. And at the moment, every institution has the labs. You have the expertise from the professors, or you have the technology transfer office. But we believe that it's really worth sharing these things to get to scale. And so we think that it's much easier to raise, for example, venture capital for the startup teams, because it's you have much more players. We have around 250,000 students and 30,000 researchers in our Unite consortium. And we would like to become a strong international player, because we think that we are very attractive for international talents, not only because it's Berlin, but also because we have these really excellent research institutions. And let me say two more words, because of course the idea is to have something which is sustainable. So after the 5 years, it should exist and it should be successful. So we really think that it's, on the one hand, the network, which is very important, but on the other hand, we have a strong focus on digital tools. So we are building a digital platform for matching the processes, for matching expertise, capital, and also for collecting relevant data from the ecosystem. So these are just a few points, and I think much has been said before. I also strongly believe that it's very important in Germany to have this entrepreneurial spirit from the beginning on, from the students until the researchers.
Yeah, thank you very much for this introduction about the startup factories, and we will definitely come back to that. I would like to include now some of the questions that you submitted already from the audience through Slido. Thanks for your questions, and please keep on writing questions in that chat. And let's talk. We talked a lot about entrepreneurial mindset, mentoring, and creating innovation ecosystems. Let's talk a little bit about money also. So one of the question, Dietmar, I would like to pass to you as the co-founder of the German Accelerator is, what role do venture studios and venture capital play in effective innovation ecosystems?
Let me simply say absolutely crucial, right? But the point here is that we have several elements that, like multipliers, have to come together. The spaghetti graph is very telling in that there's not just one string of spaghetti in the picture. You have to bring together multiple ones. Finance is, of course, absolutely crucial, and financiers, venture capitalists, are also crucial contributors, for example, to entrepreneurship courses. I'm very much, and made the point very forcefully, and I'm happy about that. Bring people in who have done it. Let them talk, right? Be inclusive. Bring people in from all walks of this ecosystem or the spaghetti graph in order to tell the stories, because this is not theory finding its way via hypothesis and theorem into application. This is learning from practice very, very often. And venture capitalists can make a great contribution there. I think the most fruitful collaboration happens when you also have students who are active on their own, when you have a student association that goes into entrepreneurship, when they are governing their own fate, so to speak. Fortunately, there are examples of that. There's an organization called Center for Digital Technology and Management here in Munich, where essentially the students run the show. They are interested in entrepreneurship, and it works. And last year they had 7 of their startups accepted by Y Combinator. So I'm a little worried that they are too successful in sort of bringing a lot of startups into Y Combinator. But I think we have rarely still. I take the criticism that was implicit here, but we can do this. But we have to bring the right people together. The financiers are absolutely crucial there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Another question that goes more towards the talent question, Olaf, maybe to you, is how will changes to H-1B visas affect startups? This is a little bit looking into the future and kind of guessing, but do you see a direct impact? Or maybe we can talk a little bit more about how important regulations, visa regulations are in order to attract talent.
Yeah. Look, this is obviously a sensitive political issue in the United States as well as in Germany, but foreign talent is absolutely crucial, as you pointed out, Zahar, right, with the percentages of 40% Silicon Valley, 25% across the United States are foreign-born entrepreneurs. And so this is going to hurt the innovation ecosystem. It's a fallacy to think that US-born or German-born entrepreneurs and VCs can stem this by themselves. We need, for the reasons that I outlined, we need the foreign talent that is well trained, that has entrepreneurial drive. There is something that comes with the drive of an immigrant that is very hard to find elsewhere. And so obviously tech companies in Silicon Valley are concerned about this. But it's one thing for a tech company with deep pockets to say, I'm going to buy myself a gold-plated AI scientist from abroad for $100,000, which frankly, given what some of these engineers are being paid in salary, is peanuts. But it's a whole different story for small entrepreneurs that have to bootstrap, that don't even have $10,000 to help somebody apply for a visa. So instead of making it harder, we should make it easier, and we should make it easy in Germany as well as the United States by maybe creating more specialized funds that say, look, if you are a company, below 5 employees, there is a fund that will help you pay for lawyer fees. For legal fees. So yes, it's absolutely critical, and it's a shame that we are not that we're subjecting the process of societal renewal to short-term politics.
Yeah, thank you very much. Darren, there are a lot of questions about UC Berkeley's innovation ecosystem. And one of the questions is, how does UC Berkeley reward entrepreneurial achievements in the academic track when it comes to promotions, funding, and staff?
Wow,
That's a good.
that's so this is something that I would normally touch on, and I didn't do it in the beginning because University of California, I believe, is unique in the world because I keep asking. We get a lot of visitors in Berkeley where I go over basically, what we're doing and how we're doing it. And one of the things in how we're doing it is that from the top, from the president of the University of California, remember it's a 10 campus system, expressly has directed that innovation and entrepreneurship activity be considered for tenure evaluation. So when a professor goes from assistant to associate, this is a memo that came out. This has been at Berkeley for 5 years, but across the system now for the last 3 years. So I do, every time I host a visit, I say, are you aware of any other university in the world that expressly values this? And I found one. It was a university in Australia, but so it seems to be quite unusual.
But definitely a recommendation for universities who would like to foster innovation and entrepreneurship. So this is definitely a very valuable takeaway. Maybe there is another question, and I would like to hear from Darren from UC Berkeley, but maybe also from Berlin, from Unite. What is the ratio of undergrad students, grad students, and professors in startup? This is something we haven't talked about, like who is typically an entrepreneur in the university ecosystem. And maybe we can first start with UC Berkeley. I mean, we have several representatives from UC Berkeley, but maybe you have, Darren, you have numbers. Where these founders come from, at which level they are usually. And then maybe Stephanie, if you have numbers from Berlin, that would be very interesting.
Yeah, we have a lot of undergraduate founded startups. I'm aware of this because most of them are going through Berkeley Skydeck's Pad 13 program, which is a program that takes advantage of the 800 advisors that we have, the 50 workshops that we have every 6 months. And it's it's really designed for startups that are coming from the campus. And we typically have about 80 every 6 months. So there's a lot of interest in this coming from the campus. I'll caveat because most undergraduate startups, frankly, it's difficult when they're undergrads, right? Because they're busy with school. They can't be full time in a program if you're still full-time student. So there's a real distinction between undergraduate startups and then, of course, startups that are founded by faculty, postdocs, and grad students, because faculty have the option of going part-time, at least by policy at UC, 1 day a week to be working on a startup. And many grad students and postdocs just kind of get roped into it in the lab. And so they're effectively full-time. Those are pretty different categories. But if you're looking for numbers, there's many more undergrads with startup ideas than faculty blastouts. However, the faculty blastouts are the ones, realistically, are the ones that are going to garner investment interest and actually take off. There are some undergraduate ones that do, when they finish their studies, proceed to blast out. And we see that reflected in the PitchBook results. But while they're students, it's more of an educational experience.
Thank you very much. Stephanie, what can you tell us about Berlin?
So I do not have any numbers. That's the reason why we need the platform, the digital one. But what I can say in our programs, of course, the undergraduates are very interested, and it's much easier to motivate them to be part of the programs. And another target group, we have alumni. So we have many alumni participating in our programs, and I think that they were really interesting because they have they have a kind of business experience. They can come after 2 or 3 years when they have experience. For example, they have worked for a consultancy or whatever, and then they come back to university, and then they search a professor or another postdoc they can found with. So I think that this is also a very interesting group, and we strongly, we would like to expand, especially the connection to these alumni.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm running an incubator program at a German university, and every time I make announcements, 90% of the applicants are always male. What can I do to attract more women in my programs? What am I doing wrong, or is it just women are less entrepreneurial than men?
Okay, so first of all, you're not doing anything wrong. You just want to look, and you're asking the right question. How do I go forward from here? Look at the language that you're using on your website. Look at the pictures. Do basically what an entrepreneur would do and put it in front of people and say, what do you think about this? Why does this attract you or not? We see this quite a bit in the entrepreneurial language. It's very much competition driven. It's very much like, oh, success and win and so forth. And we actually had this discussion with some university, I think out of Hamburg, that ask, the women go into the first program, but then they don't go on to do the fundraising. And we looked at their language, and it was so competitive that it was really repelling people. I believe. So, I mean, that's one little tactical thing you can do. Literally reaching out to people proactively and highlighting this as an opportunity is something we needed to do when we wanted to bring more African American women into the guild here in California. Same topic, right? The speakers. I just went to a summit over here. It was on AI, and yes, 90% were male. Okay. Bring more women into your program and highlight them on the website. These are great women. These are role models. They've done it, so you can do it. We heard this from this cohort. They didn't even know that entrepreneurship and spinning out existed as an option, right? So if you can see her, you can be her. So highlighting more women in your podcast, in your marketing outreach, in your blog posts, in your interviews, whatever you may be doing to recruit and get the word out is a great idea. And also on the funding side, I will say the same, right? Like bring the female investors to the forefront and create programs at your universities where you teach angel investing. Yeah, that's actually relatively new in the US as well. And there's always a lot of political questions around that. But it's important to understand how do you make investment decisions, and it helps you in so many other categories of life and your career. It's a great educational path to understand how you make these investment decisions and then educate people. And again, here you can really bring in the women. You can create these women VC clubs. And so all this together, hopefully over time, will change how women think about it, and will change how women raise their hands and say, yes, this is for me. And we saw that with the DWIH Guild Academy. We said, you know what, we're going to really lean out of the window and open this up for 100 seats for the online portion of the program. We had no idea, right? Sahar, we had no idea if we would get 100 applications. Boom, they were there because it was for women, by women, blah, blah, blah. So I think long term, we don't want that anymore. We want just entrepreneurship be entrepreneurship. And if you put an entrepreneur in ChatGPT, it will show you a woman as well. and not just the guy, the nerdy guy. Yeah. And so, but up until the point we're there, we still have to fight that bias, and we have to fight against the 2% of venture funding that goes to women with only startups. And that means we have to counter create these initiatives that maybe do create programs that are just for women. And I know this is politically right now even more so than ever a question if that's the right path. But I do think there are programs that you could do that are really specific, like a 2-day hackathon for women or vibe coding. And then that's where you recruit from into the other programs that are mixed. But reach out to me. I have lots of ideas and I'm happy to review what you're doing and have that conversation.
Thank you very much. And to be honest, this is not only a political question, it's also a market and economic question, right? So there is unused talent or unattracted talent out there. And if only 2% of venture capital goes to women, we know there is much more talent out there that we can mobilize. So what can we actually do to integrate them and to support them? Another question, Dietmar, because you mentioned the Humboldtian aspect, some concepts you discussed about entrepreneurship culture reminded me of key aspects in Future Next Skills, ELA. Do you see any parallels? And are they perhaps less un-Humboldtian and thus easier to embrace in the German higher education system? Speaking of, maybe we need new narratives in order to tell our own story.
Yes, I would agree to that thesis. Humboldt, both Humboldts, we have two, right, were wonderful individuals, deep thinking, discovery, and so forth. But making that the leading model of German universities, I think, has come out of age. We should not do that. And by the way, it's counter-historical, because one of the big German industries, the chemical industry, came out of universities. So it was science put into industrial application and value added. So that's a counter-example. So I think universities are much more than just providers or for opportunities for research and a little bit of teaching. By the way, the teaching is, of course, a big technology and knowledge transfer component. We send young, trained people into the world. We do that worldwide. I think that's the same in the United States as in Germany. But we should be open for going a step further and providing the skills, providing the culture that helps people of any gender to go in and sort of make their visions, as Olaf has pointed out, there are very positive visions that we should go after, contrary to what Helmut Schmidt has said, to realize them and to put them into use for our societies. So universities in Germany, more than in other countries, still have to rise to the opportunities that we have. And fortunately, we're trying to do that. Culture is a big point, but I think we should just have a broader view as to the options and opportunities that we have and what we can give to young people who come to our institutions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. There is another question to UC Berkeley on how to successfully promote entrepreneurial thinking across usually not so entrepreneurial academic disciplines. I think the Changemakers program was a really good example for that, so I can definitely recommend to look into that. All information is also available online on the Changemakers program, which is really designed to bring in students from all disciplines and from all different fields of research. And there is also one comment, and that goes to the risk-averse part and embracing risk and to fail forward. Because someone says, I would say people here, meaning Germany, have a resistance against innovation, for example, AI, and it feels almost like a crime to use ChatGPT. Is this something that you would say is true and is a problem, Olaf, maybe?
Great. Hand me the hot button issue. Yes, I think I think it's true, and it's regrettable, especially in artificial intelligence and data science. I think it's been studied over and over. Traditionally, legacy-wise, Germans are culturally uncertainty avoiding. That is not a great precondition for entrepreneurship, but we are seeing that switch, right? And I think that's a little bit of a generational thing. But it's also good to go back to our history, right? When you look at Germany post World War II, these were generations of hands-on country builders and company builders, and I think we need to bring that back. And I think the young generations are definitely up for that. I also want to say, look, entrepreneurship, as some say, I don't think it's correct, is not a young person's domain. I think anybody at any age can be an entrepreneur. And in fact, it's been shown, not just for women entrepreneurs, but also for older entrepreneurs, that the fact that they have different judgment capability, different experience horizons, that they can actually be more successful. The conversion rate, the success rate is actually higher for older entrepreneurs. So I think we need to bring back that cultural affinity for change, for uncertainty, and frankly, for that mantra, it's almost stereotypical that you can address uncertainty by just building the future you want, and I think that still holds true for us, and it could hold true for Germany.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you very much. And there is one comment I would like to mention. Thank you very much, Bernd, for mentioning the German Global Minds Initiative, the 1000 Köpfe Plus program of our Ministry of Research, Technology and Space. And the question is if during the application process or within the application process, if transfer and entrepreneurial achievements in the jury are decisions for grants. So the decision-making process and the evaluation process is a multi-step process and considers or takes into consideration the applicant as in a whole complete CV viewed qualification. So of course, any kind of activities that the applicant brings in will be considered. And we definitely see in our selection committees that being creative and exploring different things is definitely different than it used to be, is evaluated and seen as a positive aspect of each applicant. But there is still a lot to do. And as we come to the close of our session, I would like to ask each of you for one actionable recommendation. Imagine you are advising a German university leader. What single step would you recommend they take to foster innovation and entrepreneurship? And think of something actionable that's maybe also scalable. And let me start. Of course, you're allowed to recommend something that is already existing. So maybe, Darren, you have an idea of a program that you already have at UC Berkeley that you would recommend German university leaders. So Darren.
I do. You know what? I get this question a lot, even just in the US. So I think what has proven to be so effective at Berkeley is that we've put together, and I mentioned this before, an organization of all the, or a group of all the organizations on campus that support innovation and entrepreneurship. Every university has multiple orgs, and it's just a matter of if you can find a way to get them to work better together, then it's super additive, right? So what we do at Berkeley is we have a monthly Zoom meeting with the 65 organizations. But here's the thing, there's no way to know what 65 orgs are doing in a 1-hour meeting. We have a shared database called the Wins and Opportunity Sheet, where as part of membership on the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Council, every org is required to put down at least one thing that they achieved in the last month that's relevant to the mission. And optionally, they can put things that didn't work, and they can put things that they would like help on. And it's, it's actually a very densely populated sheet, really sparks collaborations and communications and opportunities for working together that otherwise would just be lost. And it's so simple.
Yeah, thank you very much. So now Dietmar.
Gladly. So, of course, I would advise to adopt every measure that will now be recommended by the panel. But on top of that, the first one is, I think we need to celebrate our role models. We do that in Max Planck. We have, I think, 7 Nobel laureates who have their own companies and are making money with it, or at least are trying very hard to do that at a grander scale. And so when we advertise entrepreneurship in the society, in the Max Planck Society, we can point to them. And by the way, we have female role models as well. And that is so important to get young female doctoral students or postdocs interested in the topic. As to universities, I think it's very, very important to get buy-in from faculty. So I would always advertise to bring out of each faculty at least 2 ambassadors, okay, for entrepreneurship, to ask them within the faculty to get 4 to 6 postdoc students as ambassadors on their level, and then go further into grad students and undergraduate students in order to build sort of a system where people are brought together and can reinforce in universities that in Germany maybe have not seen that much activity, bring together people who are like-minded and do this. I think we need to start movements for entrepreneurship at these universities that have not done that much in the past. And I'm very optimistic that students will pick this up. Olaf is right. We also need to think about more seasoned, more experienced people coming in then at some point. But right now, my main concern is make that culture change happening at some of the slow-moving universities that we have had in Germany.
Thank you very much. Stephanie.
Yeah, like you said, I'm a communication scientist, so I would advise on making things visible. So make the people visible, like Dietmar said before, when they were ambassadors or whatever, so that they have visibility. But even if you do this in one university, I would really like to stress that I think that there should be a systemic change, because when we only have, the peer review article as the gold standard, there is not the recognition we need for transfer and startups. So I think that's really also a change in the German scientific system we need.
Thank you very much. Olaf.
Okay. Oops. So you told me one, and I'll give you one. I just want to draw the attention of the audience to this particular report that you've already flagged. Right, here's the URL again, and there's many recommendations here. I agree with everything that has been said by my peers here before. The one that I'm going to pick is fostering university venture funds and technology transfer networks. We've actually done this at UC Berkeley. We have a Berkeley Venture Fund. And we are now leveraging that across different venture studios and incubators across the university, right? So we have the Bioingenuity Hub. We're looking into a new venture studio for space and air technologies, and so on and so forth. And the Berkeley Venture Fund, as well as the Technology Transfer Office, will be part of those designs. This is indispensable because we need to understand that IP is the codification of creation, right? And Germany has actually fallen back from the 9th to the 11th place of the Global Innovation Index when it comes to IP creation. How could that be for the 4th largest global economy? We need to foster the creation of IP and the marketing of IP through the venture pathway. The one that I do need to tip my hat to, just because I'm a little bit of a third of an economist in my head. None of any of this will work if we do not work on market structures in Germany, and that means market structures and legal reforms for exit options for German entrepreneurs, but also favorable tax treatment, more favorable tax treatment for wealthy people that give money into venture funds and that stimulate entrepreneurship. Unless that exit mechanism happens, the whole incentive structure breaks down, right? So those are the two that I would feature. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olaf. Anne.
Well, I'm going to add a little bit of a radical point here, because we are talking about this as if innovation is a nice to have. And if you look at the world and what's happening in AI right now, this incredible transformation that we're in the middle of, and we have no idea what's going to happen to our workforce, we need more fire in this process, okay? Like, if we don't change now, Germany is not going to be 11, okay? And what does that mean for the social systems and everything else? If we don't really internalize that as a country and as the institutions, none of these little centers and little programs are going to do anything. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to create incentives at the right place where people are incentivized. Human behavior is incentivized hugely by compensation. So if your professors are getting compensated without knowing how to use ChatGPT or adding AI into their programs, that's on you. You need to change what it means to be a professor today. You need to change what it means to be a successful graduate from TUM. And if you really believe in that, then you put the lever right there where it hurts the most. And everybody will scream and everybody will be like culturally not at all acceptable. But this is the only way we're going to change it. Otherwise, the train has left and Germany is not on it, okay? At least in AI. And so to get on the train, there needs to be some drastic changes on the organizational side of our academic institutions, from my perspective. And so I want to add that radical point to really think through that. What would that entail? What would it mean to add the onus on the professors? Because then they go and say the tech transfer office is not fast enough, or we can't find it, or the notary is asking me to sit there for 8 hours to listen through a contract. And then you get real movement and a change happening, in my opinion.
Thank you so much. We saw that also we need a lot of fears and fire and emotions in order to become successful. This change is needed. We have heard today that successful innovation ecosystems require not only strong institutions, but also mindset networks and diversified funding. The Bay Area experience shows the power of entrepreneurial culture, while Germany demonstrates the strength of academic excellence and regional clusters. The real challenge here and opportunity lies in connecting these strengths and to write our own books. Thank you to our panelists for their thoughtful insights, and thank you to the audience for your active participation. I hope you leave today with both inspiration and concrete ideas for how micro-level initiatives at universities can create macro-level impact for Germany's innovation ecosystem. Please join the evaluation that you will see on Slido, and please stay in touch to foster and boost innovation and entrepreneurship on both sides of the Atlantic. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you. Bye.